Hello and welcome to How I Hire, the podcast that taps directly into the best hiring advice and insights. I'm your host, Roy Notowitz, founder of an executive recruiting and talent consulting firm called Noto Group. My team and I have spent the last decade helping to build iconic consumer brands one hire at a time. Check us out at notogroup.com to learn more. Today, I'm talking with Aimée Lapic, the Chief Digital and Marketing Officer at GoPro. She has over 20 years of experience in retail and marketing, including 15 years of digital strategy, digital marketing, and e-commerce for Gap, Banana Republic, and Pandora. In 2018, Aimée earned a coveted spot on the Forbes Top 50 Most Influential CMOs list. Aimée and I will talk about what makes a great CMO, her approach to people and culture building, and how positivity ties into her hiring philosophy. We're also going to get a sense of her recent experience being hired and onboarded virtually, a practice that's becoming increasingly necessary due to the pandemic. I've known Aimée for several years, and it's a privilege to have her on the podcast. Aimée, thank you for joining us today. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with you for quite some time.
Thank you so much, Roy. I'm loving being here, and I can remember the first time I ever talked to you, and I thought then it would be really fun to do something like this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it was in 2018 when I was doing a board search, I believe, for a purpose-driven fashion brand. It was great to talk to you and get to know you then, and I'm glad we've stayed in touch.
Me too.
So you've had a lot of success taking on huge career-defining challenges across multiple consumer segments and platforms. I'm really interested, what's been your career path and your roadmap for how you've made your career choices over the years?
You know, it's really interesting because at this point, I've worked across strategy with McKinsey & Company, loyalty programs with online financial service companies, retail, both brick and mortar and e-commerce, online music, and then now I've landed, hopefully for a long time, with GoPro, and I'm in the kind of action camera sports arena. And
Cool.
Frankly, what has been really the driving thing for me is one, I choose companies that are very customer-centric because I love figuring out how to honestly surprise and delight customers. I love thinking about their path to purchase or their path to experience. I'm very data-driven, so I choose companies where there's a predominant role that data plays in helping make better decisions. And then I also choose companies where I'm going to learn a great deal. So honestly, I try to pick a job where I'm 80% qualified and 20% of it I'm going to learn as I go, so that I always feel like I'm being stretched and that I'm adding value while learning at the same time.
Interesting.
I think that's kind of how I've thought about my career is I don't have to be perfect before I choose something, but I have to feel like I'm going to be able to add enough value so that I'm helping the company in a big way.
Exactly. Can you tell me a little bit about, how that diversity of experience has served you as a leader?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, I feel like I draw upon the early days of running CRM for Banana Republic, even today, in terms of how I think about driving loyalty within the GoPro creator base and the customer base. And I think about everything I learned at Pandora in terms of driving subscribers to what we're doing today at GoPro. We've just crossed the 500,000 mark in terms of subscribers, and we're well on our way to 1 million subscribers.
Wow, cool.
And it's all because I'm leveraging what I learned at Pandora. And the same thing is true of performance marketing. I mean, I'm a tiny bit older than probably most people out there thinking about marketing. So I've sort of learned about performance marketing as it's been evolving. A lot of kind of what has helped me get up to speed really quickly and become an expert in it is early days in CRM and kind of using the data analytics that we used first in direct mail and then in email and now in performance media. And it's honestly about taking what you know and building upon it. And that diversity of experience across, frankly, so many different industries, but boiling it down to kind of those type of tenets has really helped me a great deal.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask one of the Forbes top 50 most influential CMOs about what it takes to be a great CMO. For anyone who might be in the process of hiring a CMO currently, what are the things that they should be considering or looking for if they want to hire a proven and tested CMO like you?
Honestly, I think first and foremost, you want to hire a CMO that thinks like a CEO or a GM. They need to feel accountable and responsible for driving the business, just like the CEO. And because they happen to be kind of an expert in the marketing arena, that's a positive thing because they can use all those levers, but they need to be focused on the end business results. I think that's first and foremost. And the second thing is, I think you can never go wrong with a CMO that is 110% focused on the customer. So that customer centricity is crucial in hiring a great CMO because it will be a filter for key decisions in terms of where they put resources, how they think about content creation, how they think about marketing channels, et cetera. It all comes down to meeting the customer where they are at the right stage of their purchase journey or their experience journey, depending on your business. And I think that's not something that can be easily overlooked. And then, frankly, today, all great CMOs have to love and live by data.
Yeah.
The days of a phenomenal creative-only CMO are a little bit outdated because great creative comes from really understanding what it does to drive the business through data. And I honestly think it's got to be a nice marriage of the two without ignoring the data and what the results are. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, and it's not lastly, because you and I are going to spend a lot of time talking about this coming up, is the ability to attract, retain, and develop talent. Great CMOs are only as good as their teams, and therefore their focus really needs to be on developing a phenomenal team that works very well together towards common goals.
I wish we could talk more about how you do what you do other than hiring. This podcast topic is on hiring. You've been really innovative and done some really cool things. And so hopefully some of those things will come up as we talk about some of these examples tied to your team and hiring. So what experiences have shaped your hiring approach and philosophy out of all these different things you've done?
In my heart, I believe a great leader is phenomenal because of their team. Mm-hmm. Like it is all about whether your team performs and whether they perform together to drive the business. And so how I think about hiring is a net result of what I'm trying to build in terms of the team I'm creating. Generally, I go into a company or a new job and I first am thinking about what the business goals are or the kind of problems we're trying to solve from a business perspective. Simultaneously, I'm evaluating the talent I have in order to achieve those goals or solve those problems. And net out of that usually comes the need of, I've got a phenomenal, right side of the house in terms of the team, but I've got a couple of key areas where I absolutely need outside talent because there's no one today that can do that job. And so I'm usually hiring to fill a gap in the existing organization. But it's way more than that, as you know, because when someone enters a company like I am doing today at GoPro that has an incredibly strong culture that's been built over many, many years, I'm also hiring to make sure that culture kind of continues to grow and expand and develop without being sidetracked.
Yeah.
And so my hiring is to fill a business need. So I'm hiring for expertise, but I'm also really hiring for cultural fit, both with the company and frankly with myself as well.
Having worked at Gap and Banana Republic and Pandora, has there been any mentors or people along the way that have provided guidance or insight or that you've learned from in terms of how they hire or their approach to hiring or building teams?
Absolutely. I have been really blessed in that I've worked for so many phenomenal people over the years. So I worked for the same woman for a very long time at the Gap. I think we worked together for 6 or 7 years across 3 different brands, 3 different functional areas, but we kind of came as a team, which was great. And what I learned from her is that you tap into the people you know and trust, first and foremost. So it's okay to bet on someone that hasn't done the job 110% if they've done it 80% and they have a lot of potential. That's really critical. But when you go outside, and she frequently had to hire outside, as do I, as do most leaders, be thinking first and foremost of what you can't find already on the team. And that's what I mean by the outside expertise. Like, try to bring in someone who will be able to hit the ground running with credibility and expertise that can't be found within the company. And honestly, that helps in a number of different ways because it really does kind of give that person immediate credibility across the rest of the organization versus having that person have to kind of like prove that they're just as good as Sally or just as good as Jim. And that's, I think, really critical.
Gives them their own lane.
It gives them their own lane, exactly. And then just hire good people that people want to be around. So that kind of intangible cultural fit is super important. It's something that I've always lived by. I remember my very first team, I mean, this is a long time ago, and we were small and mighty, but the fact that we all really liked working together gave us the amplification of being a large and mighty team. And so I just continued to try to replicate that as many times as possible in my career.
That's interesting. In marketing teams, one of the interesting dynamics that I've discussed before with other hiring leaders is the mix between the creative side of the house as well as the analytical. And so those personalities can be very different, right? And then also how that comes together, how they collaborate. Have you had challenges around, hiring people that have such different perspectives and lenses? How do you sort of get those two sides of the group together?
You're absolutely right. Like, you need both. I mean, I generally try to hire someone who has a healthy respect for what they're not, frankly. So I've hired phenomenal brand/creative leaders who aren't very analytical, but they want to understand the data so they can understand how their campaigns are doing or whether they've hit the mark or not. And they have that kind of innate curiosity about the piece that they're not as attuned to. And I think that's really important. And the flip side, I've hired really strong people who only are about the numbers, right? And they have enough of a curiosity around kind of the customer experience piece that they really value how you drive a better customer experience through the strong creative, through all the different touch points working together. And I think that's what makes the team stronger is when kind of one side, if you will, or someone who's not really strong at a particular discipline has a lot of respect and curiosity about it.
Appreciation for the other
Exactly.
discipline.
Exactly.
Yeah. Generally speaking, what do you look for in candidates?
I mean, I really do look for that human connection piece.
Right.
So their approach to their career and their work, how has that played in their life? Team dynamics, how they describe the team they've worked with, the teams they've built, their bosses, super important in the past. And that balance between humility and drive, I really look for that. And then I firmly believe I should hire people that are smarter than I am. And so I look for...
That's easy for me.
Well, it's also easy for me, frankly. So I look for that level of expertise of what I'm hiring for. So whether it's the head of an e-commerce business or whether it's the head of a creative team, I'm really looking for them to own it, know it, and be terrific at it through specific details and explanation and examples to me. I can figure out how well they know it versus how good they are at talking about it. And then I really want to make sure whoever I hired is actually interested in the business that I'm in. So I ask them a lot of what they would do if they had this problem or that opportunity, et cetera, to see how ingrained they are in terms of like what this role is versus a role, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can really tell if someone is thinking about it and passionate about it versus they just want a job.
As it relates to the human connection, a lot of people interview very well and they can give great examples. How do you sort of get the unvarnished and open and honest dialogue going to truly get to know them, get sort of below the interview veneer?
Yes, I have to just say it is so much easier in person than it is remote. I just want to say that out loud because we're in a very challenging moment right now in terms of hiring people and bringing new people on board. But I think you can pick up a lot from visual cues on video. And I really do ask questions around how they approached building a team or how they, in situations where they had to give constructive feedback, what was that like? What did they do? Walk me through that process. And I talk a lot about, have you promoted someone on your team? What did that look like? What had they accomplished? How did you decide it was time to promote them? just to, again, try to get to how invested they are in developing a team versus themselves and their individual performance.
Right.
And then I frankly ask questions about how do your peers describe you? Not just how your boss describes you or how the people who work for you describe you, but what's your reputation among your peers? And that generally tends to throw people off guard until you get a little bit more of a candid answer. I don't really ask, what are your biggest weaknesses? Because everyone is ready for that with, I'm a perfectionist or I work too hard.
I know. I don't let them off the hook that easily.
Usually the level I'm trying to hire for, the person would have had to have done some pretty big cross-functional roles and jobs. And so I asked them to tell me about a time they overcame an obstacle cross-functionally where they were not responsible for the people who had to fix it or, achieve it. And how did they influence what happened, what went wrong, and that's usually pretty telling as well. Not just in terms of like how good they are at the job, but like how they approach other people. I want to hire humans, people who have flaws, basically.
Yeah. So how do you know if somebody is good at what they do? Do you have any tools you use to assess their skills or any sort of more deep technical questions?
Obviously, I go back through their past roles to try to see how they are equating performance and results and whether those are the KPIs that I would think would be important in that job or not. And then I basically generally ask them to think about what we're trying to accomplish in this role. I would specifically say, here are the problems we're trying to overcome. What's your approach? How would you solve it? And I would really look for them to be very specific in terms of what they would do in the first 90 days to assess the situation, how they would start to get early wins, because I think that's critical in any role. Like, what would be the first 3 wins that they would try to accomplish, how they would assess the team that's there versus an agency versus outside folks, et cetera. I think it comes down to, can they actually hit the ground running and do the job that I'm hiring them for?
Yeah. So it's like a job simulation almost.
Yes. I try to stay away from like really robust case studies because it's a lot of time and effort to put together a PowerPoint presentation for a role that you may or may not get. I'm just trying to figure out how they think about it and their approach versus how beautiful their PowerPoint skills are.
Right. You're such a positive person. How does that tie into your approach to people and culture building? You talked a little bit about joyfulness and time spent at work and how that should be a great experience for the team.
It's super important to me, Roy. I mean, I really try to create joyful moments at work and really positive teams. And it is, frankly, I didn't mention this before, but I do hire for positive attitude. I actually hire for that over clear aptitude.
Interesting.
Because I feel like if someone has, enough of the expertise and a can-do it attitude, I'm hitting the jackpot because they will go the extra mile to learn more and do a better job. And frankly, they'll spur other people along with them. So the amplification on the whole team will be palatable. So I love that. I spend a lot of time trying to create positive teams that work well together, that think about the fun factor or the joy factor. So I am trying to make that happen even in today's remote working culture, which normally just naturally would have happened in offices. But I think that's really important, is that people have a breather, and the kind of fun knowing each other role helps you get to the finish line a lot faster. Honestly, what I've done is I've invested in bringing my leadership team together kind of early in my jobs and often, initially to get to know each other. Within 3 months of a role or a new job, I try to have a roadmap of what we're trying to accomplish and what are the big initiatives that are going to get us there. And then that, of course, evolves as I get more information or the team gets more information. And so the business goals and objectives are, I don't want to say they're easy to get to, but they're not as tough to get to as kind of a team culture where people really know each other and they trust each other. And so that becomes a part of my focus. I think it's a tried and true method, and I'm excited to do it at GoPro, even remotely. Yeah,
I think that's one thing that's kind of unique about your current role, is that you were hired during the pandemic.
Yes.
And you've been onboarded and working remotely since the day you started. So what was it like being hired virtually, and how have you gotten up to speed, and how have you gotten to know your team?
So it's kind of interesting. I literally went into the office once. I've met, at this point, 3 people in person from, a company of almost 1,000 people.
Wow.
I have to say, it's been very different. So we did a lot of WebEx interviews, and it felt a little weird, but I felt like I could connect with people. I got to know the job that way. I've had a GoPro for a few years, so I knew the product, and I just tried to experience the company like outside in versus inside out. But I did kind of keep waiting to go back into the office before I made a decision. I was literally like waiting in the late March, early April time period thinking, well, at some point I'm going to be able to go back into the office. And then that sort of came and went. And I just was like, well, I like these people and they seem to like me. I'm going to go ahead and take the job.
Well, I can see them being confident in hiring you just based on your experience and everything that you've accomplished and how you show up,
Thank you.
Have you hired anyone virtually yet?
I have not yet hired someone directly virtually. I've had people on my team be hired virtually. I've interviewed a lot of people virtually. It's more difficult, frankly. Here's why it's more difficult, is that getting up to speed in a job remote means that the person who's getting up to speed has to be a real self-starter.
Yeah.
And has to have a lot of high energy. I mean, I've talked to so many people who are on Zoom and WebEx like I am for 8+ hours a day, and it's very tiring, very exhausting. Imagine starting a new job and a new role in that kind of environment. It takes a lot of energy. And so I'm hiring for that high level of energy and that positivity and the self-starter. And the reason is, if you make a mistake and hire the wrong person in this environment, it'll be very difficult for them to actually get to have a real impact on the company. And it'll be very difficult for the company to figure out how to connect with them, et cetera. The stakes are higher. And so the last thing you want to do is bring in the wrong person and have that person fail. That would be a horrible experience for everyone involved.
Exactly.
So I've just spent way more time on the upfront assessment of people, not just of the people, because so many people are so smart. It's about the fit, and not just the fit with the company, but the fit with the remote culture of a company. That's just a big unknown. At GoPro, we are not planning to go back in the office till, the minimum would be July, except for certain groups, et cetera. And I'm sure that's the same across so many different companies, which means the person needs to be very comfortable getting up to speed.
Yeah.
Actually, I hired an EA. Sherry and I have been working together. She was brand new, and she, like me, started virtually. She has hit the ground running because she's so positive, I would say. So it really does make a huge difference.
I think one of the things that's probably a good outcome from everybody working remotely as it relates to interviewing and interviewing remotely has been the interview actually matters more than ever. You can't sort of be relaxed about, each and every interaction. You really have to know what you want to accomplish in that conversation and then keep adding to it with subsequent video conference calls or whatever projects and things like that, just to make sure that you really do get to know them and that you're not just glossing over some of the details.
I think you're 100% right. It's interesting because in previous lives, when I was interviewing for new roles, I spent a lot of time on the logistics. Like, how am I going to fit this interview in, and how do I get logistically to that person, et cetera. And now all of the time and energy is on the content of the actual interview, because it's not about logistics, because there are no commute times to and from interviews. And so I do think it places a larger onus on being mindful in the moment of each and every interaction and preparing for those interactions. I think it puts a much bigger emphasis on doing the homework of the company and of the current state of the company as well.
Yeah, I mean, I also sometimes like to turn off the video, not on every call, but just like old school. Let's just be in the audio mode. I think it helps the person really focus more on the answers and the dialogue, and a little bit less on, they're looking at me right now kind of thing that's going on in the back of your brain always when you're on video.
I think that's absolutely true. You do not have to look like a fashion model to get a job.
Has joining a company remotely and working in this way changed your perspective on hiring and onboarding generally? Is anything going to change after, I guess, in terms of your approach?
Absolutely. I honestly think my whole approach to remote work and getting to know people is evolving throughout this whole process. And by that, I mean, really, to your point, focusing on being in the moment with people, thinking about what they're saying, increasing my listening to people is happening. And therefore, I think I'll do a better job of tailoring the onboarding for what that person needs, not just how do I teach them about the company and the role, but like where are they in their career journey and what are they trying to accomplish and how does that fit into the role?
Yeah.
I hope to be more tailored in that than I've been in the past because it is more about customizing for people, I think.
So in all of your experience, obviously, you've had hiring successes and surely all of us have had failures. What have you learned from those hiring mistakes? Are there any themes?
Yes, I have had wins and losses for sure. I think the reason I put so much emphasis on positive attitude is because in the past, when I hired for the skill set and the expertise and didn't focus as much on the how the person will show up, how they'll accomplish their results, it backfired in terms of team dynamics, their ability to be successful long-term within the company or long-term within the role. And so I pay way more attention to that. I really am hiring for that positive attitude and the agility. Growth mindset is a real thing that is critical in business today. The ability to learn and grow from your mistakes. And so I'm trying to very much hire for that, not for the job I'm hiring now, but for the future of that person and where we need to go as a company.
So you talk about the how. That's interesting because I'm wondering between companies, let's say between Pandora and GoPro and Gap, is there different ways of getting things done in terms of the how people did stuff? So for example, how they communicated, how they made decisions, how they collaborated or not. Have those been different from company to company? And have you had to sort of fine tune the how for each different team that you were building, different companies?
And the short answer is yes. Each company is a little bit different in terms of kind of the cultural norms and how work is done and how decisions are made. I mean, I think it's more about how decisions are made. Early in my career, I worked for an online financial service company, and literally the how was who knew who. It was highly politicized. If you knew the right people, your work could get done. If you didn't, it didn't.
That doesn't sound fun.
No, I was miserable. And so I left because I thought, golly, I want to work where people are smart. And so I went to the Gap and, I had a great run at the Gap. I was there 14 years. I have only positive things to say about the Gap. It was amazing. The people are very, very smart and very focused on driving the business in the right ways, doing the right thing for customers, for employees, for suppliers, for vendors. I mean, it's just an amazing company. And so the how was, how do we accomplish the right thing, for all these different constituencies? But it meant there was a lot of kind of collaboration, a lot of working cross-functionally. It made it harder to make quicker decisions at the time, even though in the end, we always ended in the right place. That was a different type of company, a different type of like how you got things done. And at Pandora, it was very much a turnaround situation when I got to Pandora. I mean, Pandora was the first in online music and had a phenomenal run. I happened to come at the end when they were not having a phenomenal run. And we turned that company around again. And the how was about moving faster than they had been moving and being more agile and kind of garnering the resources on driving to some very specific goals in terms of getting to profitability, getting to more advertising sales, recapturing customers that had left us. It was very focused and it was about faster decision making, which was very different than the Gap.
Right.
And now coming to GoPro, it is a collaborative culture, similar a little bit to the Gap in terms of like, it's really positive. It is definitely a company built on passion for the customer, passion for the creators of the content. And we are very focused on path to profitability, doing the right thing for our customers, driving direct to consumer, not at the expense of some of our very important retail partners. And so there's a balance going on, but we are making amazing strides. And I'd say the decision-making has to be fast in order to get there. And so the culture is evolving to do that.
So what are you currently working on or excited about? Is there anything coming up that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, honestly, I feel like at GoPro, we have a tiger by the tail right now. I'm really excited about driving this direct-to-consumer business and this subscription business, because it is changing how the company is thinking about customers in terms of creating an ecosystem for the customers, their experience within the app, software to make the experience even better with better editing tools. And we have some really exciting tools coming down the pipe in a couple of months. And then we're revamping our entire e-commerce experience. And that's pretty fun and exciting. I mean, I can't wait to look back 2 years from now and say, wow.
Right. I was part of that.
Yes.
So is that subscription thing, if you can talk about, is that something like YouTube, but on steroids or for active?
So it is for GoPro camera owners. And basically, it's everything from kind of editing tools within the app and unlimited cloud storage, which is super important as you're shooting video. But it's also exclusive access to early products, discounts on some of the products. And we've, literally since I've been there, we've launched a whole range of lifestyle gear, waterproof, durable backpacks. I mean, we're creating a whole ecosystem for our subscribers.
A whole lifestyle almost.
Yes, it's a whole lifestyle. And they've been living the GoPro lifestyle long before I got here. So I'm just the conduit for helping get people who love GoPro more access to GoPro, basically.
Cool.
And it's so inspiring. I love following us on social media and seeing what content creators are coming up with just by filming their GoPros. I mean, I get chills. It's pretty amazing.
It sort of captures what's most important in life, right? Are those experiences with friends and family and adventures and
that's right on.
Stuff that sort of matters, as a human.
As a human, the last 8 months have taught us that those moments are super important and cherishable. And if GoPro can help enable more of that and kind of the remembering of everything we've all shared together, it feels like a really good place to be.
Yeah. Aimée, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I feel like there's so many great insights here, and it's been just such a joy keeping in touch with you and seeing your incredible work out there. How can people get in touch with you?
Thank you so much, Roy. I've loved talking to you, as I always do. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me, and I'm so happy to be a guest on your podcast, and let me know how I can help in the future.
Thanks for tuning in to How I Hire. Visit howihire.com for additional information about this episode. You can access more conversations about hiring there, including my recent conversation with the Pacific Cycle team, which dives deeper into the topic of virtual hiring. We also send out a newsletter every month with updates and featured career content. Let your friends and colleagues know that they can listen to the show wherever they get their podcasts. How I Hire is created by Noda Group Executive Search. To find out more about Noda Group, visit nodagroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn. This podcast was produced by Anna McLean. For more information about her great work, go to aomclean.com.